To escape an arranged marriage, she forcefully kissed a security guard, unaware he was a secret billionaire. Hello, my beautiful family. Welcome to another thrilling tale of love on our channel. I hope this video finds you well and happy. You know, I've been thinking about all your amazing comments on our last story, and my heart just fills with joy reading them. I'd love to hear even more from you. If you enjoyed our previous journey together, drop a big yes in the comments below. Tell me what touched your heart the most, what made you smile, what made you cry. Your thoughts and reactions make these stories come alive, and I treasure every single comment you share. You know, my dear family, these stories aren't just content for me, they're a labor of love. Every day, I spend 10 to 12 hours carefully crafting each tale, making sure every emotion, every moment resonates with your heart. Sometimes I stay up late into the night, rewriting scenes until they're perfect, because you deserve nothing less than the very best. Your likes, shares, and heartfelt comments are what keeps me going. When you tell me how these stories touch your lives, it makes every minute worth it. You're not just viewers, you're my motivation. Just yesterday, I witnessed something magical that I just have to share with you. While grabbing coffee at my regular cafe downtown, I heard a voice that made me pause. As I turned to look, I noticed a group of college students huddled around a phone, completely absorbed in one of our stories. Their reactions, their gasps, their shared excitement, it touched my heart so deeply. I was just smiling throughout because it reminded me exactly why I do this and why these stories matter. That's why I always love to know where in the world you're watching from, especially our new members of this beautiful family. So, before we get started into today's story, quickly drop your country's name in the comments below. And while you're sharing, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt trapped by other people's expectations? You know that moment when your heart wants one thing, but duty demands another? I bet many of you have stood at that crossroads before. And it's incredible how universal these feelings are, whether you're watching from the United States or anywhere else in the world. Now, my beautiful family, let me take you into a story that will make your heart race and your soul soar. It's about a woman who found herself caught between family duty and the calling of her heart. One split-second decision, a desperate kiss, changed everything. But remember, nothing is ever as simple as it seems, especially when that handsome security guard isn't exactly who he appears to be. So, get comfortable, maybe grab a warm drink, and let your heart open to this tale of love, courage, and destiny. Let's begin. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Bennett Industries' executive floor, casting a golden glow across Olivia Bennett's desk. At 26, she commanded attention not just because of her last name, but because of her brilliance. Her Harvard MBA wasn't just a piece of paper. She'd graduated top of her class while simultaneously running 3 successful charity initiatives. Today, she sat reviewing quarterly reports, her natural curls pulled back in a sleek bun, her burgundy power suit a stark contrast to her deep brown skin. Numbers had always been her sanctuary. In the world of finance, everything made sense, clean, precise, logical. Unlike the mess her personal life had become. "Miss Bennett?" Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your father wants to see the Morrison portfolio analysis." Olivia's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up the complex financial model she'd spent weeks perfecting. This was what she was born for, not the path her father had chosen for her. The analysis showed a clear opportunity for Bennett Industries to expand into sustainable energy, potentially creating thousands of jobs while boosting their bottom line by 40%. Her colleagues often joked that she could smell a good investment from miles away. But it was more than that. Olivia had an innate understanding of market dynamics, a gift for seeing patterns others missed. She'd turned the company's Asian division around in just 8 months, earning the respect of even the most skeptical board members. Yet here she sat, knowing that all her achievements, all her potential, might soon be reduced to a footnote in someone else's story. The weight of her father's expectations pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy crown, one she'd never asked to wear. The click of Olivia's heels echoed through the marble corridor as she made her way to her father's office. Through the glass walls, she could see Richard Bennett standing at his window, phone pressed to his ear, his silver hair catching the sunlight. He was speaking with Robert Maxwell again. These calls had become more frequent over the past month. "The merger will double our market share," her father was saying, his voice carrying that tone of barely contained triumph. "Bennett Maxwell Industries will dominate the East Coast market." He turned, catching sight of Olivia, and gestured for her to enter. Richard Bennett had built his empire from nothing, a fact he never let anyone forget. Started in a garage in Brooklyn, Bennett Industries now occupied 40 floors of prime Manhattan real estate. But lately, Maxwell Corp had been eating into their market share, aggressive and ruthless in their tactics. The solution? If you can't beat them, join them, or rather, make them join you. "Olivia, perfect timing," Richard said, ending his call. He moved to his desk, pulling up a holographic display of market projections. "Look at these numbers. With Maxwell's technology and our distribution network, we'd be unstoppable." She studied the figures, her stomach tightening. The deal made perfect sense on paper, a marriage of assets that would create a corporate giant. A marriage. The word burned in her mind. "Dad, these projections assume Maxwell Corp's new tech platform performs as promised. Their beta testing results weren't. That's why we need someone we trust on the inside," Richard interrupted, his brown eyes, so like her own, fixing her with that familiar look of paternal authority. "Someone with the Bennett intelligence and instincts. Someone who understands both families' interests." The subtext was clear. This wasn't just a merger of companies, it was a merger of dynasties. And she was the collateral, the guarantee, the living contract that would bind it all together. Olivia stood in her office later that afternoon, staring at the diamond ring that felt more like a shackle than a symbol of love. James Maxwell had presented it 3 months ago, in front of both their families, with cameras flashing and champagne flowing. A perfect match, the business magazines had called it. The merger of the year, both corporate and personal. James just called, her assistant's voice interrupted her thoughts. He's moved tomorrow's wedding rehearsal to 2 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. Something about a last-minute board meeting. Of course he had. James Maxwell never consulted, only commanded. She'd seen enough of his true nature in the past 3 months to know their future together would follow the same pattern. The phone call she wasn't supposed to overhear, where he spoke about her like an acquisition. The way he dismissed her suggestions in merger meetings, only to present them as his own ideas minutes later. "The Maxwell heir," she muttered, turning the ring on her finger. New York's most eligible bachelor. The media painted him as charming, brilliant, a modern prince of Wall Street. They didn't see him in private, the cold calculations, the casual cruelty, the absolute certainty that everything and everyone had a price. Tomorrow, she would walk down the aisle at St. Patrick's Cathedral. 500 guests would watch her say "I do" to a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenient business transaction. The guest list read like a who's who of Wall Street, CEOs, politicians, power brokers. All gathering to witness the corporate marriage of the decade. Her phone buzzed, another text from James, "Wear the blue suit to tomorrow's rehearsal." The photographer from Forbes will be there. Not a request. Never a request. Just like his father, James Maxwell lived in a world where money and power meant never having to ask, only tell. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her office floor as Olivia struggled to breathe. Her silk blouse felt too tight, the air too thin. Wedding planners had been calling all day, questions about flowers, table settings, the orchestra. Details, endless details, each one another link in the chain dragging her down. The wedding dress arrived for final alterations. Her mother's text flashed on her screen. "Don't forget your 6 p.m. fitting." Olivia pressed her forehead against the cool glass of her office window, 40 stories above Manhattan. Below, people moved like tiny dots, free to choose their own paths. Her reflection stared back at her, perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect posture. The perfect corporate princess. But her eyes held a wild desperation that no amount of designer makeup could hide. She pulled up her company email, trying to lose herself in work. A new acquisition proposal waited for her review. Numbers. Safe, reliable numbers. But even they betrayed her. The date stamp on the document reminded her that in less than 24 hours, she'd be Mrs. James Maxwell. The thought sent her heart racing. "Miss Bennett?" Her assistant's voice again. "The wedding planner needs to confirm the seating arrangement for the Maxwell family table." "I need..." Olivia's voice cracked. "I need some air." She grabbed her phone and keycard, almost running to the private executive elevator. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every person she passed seemed to be whispering about tomorrow's wedding. The security cameras tracked her movement. She could almost feel James watching through them, monitoring her every step like he'd done since their engagement. In the elevator, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored walls. Behind her polished exterior, she saw a trapped animal, searching for escape. The private elevator doors opened to the lobby, and Olivia nearly collided with him, the new security guard who'd started last week. Marcus Stone. He caught her arm, steadying her, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. "Ms. Bennett, are you all right?" His voice was deep, concerned, nothing like James's calculated tones. His touch was gentle but firm, his dark eyes searching her face with genuine worry. What no one in the building knew, what even Olivia couldn't know yet, was that Marcus Stone was far from a simple security guard. The Rolex hidden beneath his uniform sleeve cost more than a guard's yearly salary. The earpiece he wore connected him not to building security, but to his own corporate headquarters across town. As CEO of Stone Enterprises, Marcus had built his tech empire from the ground up, valuing privacy over publicity. No photos of him existed in the press. His name barely registered in business circles, exactly as he preferred it. But when he'd caught wind of the Bennett-Maxwell merger, something had felt wrong. The numbers didn't add up. Maxwell's tech platform had too many red flags. So here he was, working undercover in Bennett Industries' lobby, watching, learning, protecting investments and interests that went far deeper than anyone suspected. He hadn't planned on Olivia Bennett being different. He'd expected a spoiled heiress. Instead, he'd observed a brilliant businesswoman being slowly crushed by her family's expectations. "I'm fine," Olivia managed, straightening her blazer. "Thank you, Mr. Stone." He nodded professionally, stepping back to his post. But his eyes followed her as she walked through the lobby, noting the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands. In the week he'd been here, he'd seen her mast slip only twice. Both times, the pain in her eyes had made him want to break his cover, tell her everything. Their interactions over the past week had been brief but charged with an undercurrent neither could explain. Each morning, Marcus would hold the door, their fingers brushing as she took her coffee from the lobby cafe. He'd noticed she took it black, no sugar, just like him. "Good morning, Ms. Bennett," he'd say, and she'd pause, just for a heartbeat, as if his voice was a moment of peace in her chaotic world. One rainy evening, she'd forgotten her umbrella. Without a word, he'd walked her to her car, sheltering her under his. They'd talked about nothing and everything, the Yankees' latest game, her favorite cafe 2 blocks over, his grandmother's secret recipe for apple pie. For 5 minutes, she wasn't the Bennett heiress, and he wasn't just a security guard. They were just two people, sharing stories in the rain. Yesterday, she dropped a file near his post. As they both reached for it, their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. He'd seen the trapped look in her eyes, the silent cry for help. She'd noticed the intelligence behind his gaze, the way he carried himself, too confident for a simple guard. Sometimes, he'd said quietly, helping her gather the papers, "The right path isn't the one that's been laid out for us." She'd frozen, studying his face. And sometimes, she'd whispered back, "We don't have the luxury of choosing our path." Their fingers had lingered, touched, withdrawn. A security camera had turned their way, and they'd stepped apart. But something had changed. A connection had formed, fragile but real. Now, watching her walk through the lobby, Marcus felt the weight of his secrets, his true identity, pressing down on him. And Olivia, stepping out into the Manhattan afternoon, carried with her the memory of those brief encounters, moments of authenticity in a world built on appearances. Neither knew that tomorrow, everything would change. Neither could guess that a desperate kiss would shatter their carefully constructed facades. For now, they were just two people, stealing glances across a marble lobby, each holding pieces of a truth that would soon transform both their lives. St. Patrick's Cathedral loomed over Fifth Avenue, its Gothic spires piercing the afternoon sky. Inside, Olivia Bennett stood at the back of the nave, watching the wedding planner direct traffic like an overcaffeinated symphony conductor. The clicking of her heels echoed off ancient stones as photographers adjusted their equipment, catching every moment of the Maxwell Bennett wedding rehearsal. "Stand straighter, darling," her mother whispered, adjusting Olivia's shoulders. "The Forbes photographer is here." James paced near the altar, barking orders into his phone. He'd arrived 20 minutes late, complaining about the timing, though he'd been the one to change it. The wedding coordinator hovered nearby, her smile growing more strained with each of his demands. "The flowers are wrong," James snapped, pointing at the arrangements. "I specifically said white roses, not cream. Do you know how that'll look in photos? Fix it." His voice carried through the cathedral, making several staff members flinch. Olivia watched her father and Robert Maxwell huddled in a corner, heads bent together over a tablet, discussing merger details even here, even now. The sacred space felt more like a corporate boardroom, complete with assistants scurrying around with tablets and phones. "Places, everyone." The wedding planner clapped her hands. "Let's run through this one more time." As Olivia took her position, she caught a glimpse of Marcus standing by the entrance. The cathedral had insisted on additional security due to the high-profile nature of the wedding. His presence, familiar and steady, made her heart skip, the only real thing in this theatrical production her life had become. During a break in the rehearsal, Olivia slipped away to the cathedral's side chapel, seeking a moment of peace. but James's voice drifted through the ancient stone archway, followed by his brother's lower tones. She froze, hidden behind a massive stone pillar. "You're being too obvious, James," his brother warned. "I saw how you spoke to her in front of the photographers." James's laugh was cold, dismissive. "What does it matter? By this time tomorrow, the merger will be locked in. She can't back out, Daddy Dearest has made sure of that. After we're married, she'll learn her place." "And what place is that?" "Trophy wife, silent partner, whatever you want to call it. She thinks she's so brilliant with her Harvard MBA and her financial models. But once I take over both companies, she'll be too busy planning charity galas to interfere with real business." Olivia's hands trembled as she pressed them against the cool stone. She'd known, of course, seen glimpses of his true nature over the past months. But hearing it laid out so baldly. What about her Asian division turnaround? The board respects her. The board will respect whoever holds the controlling shares, James cut in. And that'll be me. Her father's already agreed to transfer voting rights as a wedding gift. Sweet, isn't it? She hands over her birthright the moment she says "I do." The sound of approaching footsteps made them lower their voices, but Olivia had heard enough. Her father had arranged not just a marriage, but a corporate coup. She'd be stripped of everything she'd worked for, reduced to a footnote in the Maxwell empire. "There you are." The wedding planner's voice made her jump. "We need to practice the vows." Olivia walked mechanically back to the rehearsal, her mind racing. Each step down the aisle felt like another step toward a prison cell. She half listened to the priest's instructions, watching James check his phone during the blessing. Her father beamed from the front pew, seeing only the perfect merger he'd crafted, blind to his daughter's silent screams. The cathedral's ancient clock struck 4, its deep tones echoing through the vaulted ceiling. For hours until the rehearsal dinner. 16 hours until the wedding. The walls seemed to close in with each passing second. She scanned the room, her finance-trained mind automatically assessing options, calculating risks. The main entrance was too public, photographers camped outside, waiting to catch glimpses of the society wedding of the year. The side exits would be watched. James had made sure security was tight, claiming concerns about corporate espionage. But there, near the back, stood Marcus. His eyes met hers for a brief moment, and suddenly everything crystallized. The security guard rotation she'd observed over the past week. The 3-minute gap between shift changes. The service entrance that led to a quiet side street. During the final run-through, she slipped her hand into her purse, fingers brushing her spare keycard to Bennett Industries. She'd need access to her office, her documents, her personal files, everything that proved her competence, everything that showed Maxwell Corp's questionable tech practices. 15 minutes until the photographer wants family photos, the wedding planner announced. 15 minutes. One chance. She thought of James's words in the side chapel, of her father's betrayal, of the corporate handcuffs disguised as wedding rings. No trust fund was worth this. No family legacy deserved this sacrifice. "I need some air," Olivia announced, her voice steadier than she felt. She walked quickly toward the back of the cathedral, ignoring her mother's protests about the photographs. James didn't even look up from his phone. Her heels clicked against the stone floor, each step bringing her closer to Marcus, closer to freedom. She could hear footsteps behind her, probably the wedding planner, coming to escort her back. It was now or never. Marcus straightened as she approached, his professional mask in place. But his eyes held that same warmth she'd noticed all week, that quiet understanding. He started to step aside, to open the door for her as usual. Instead, Olivia reached up, grabbed his collar, and pulled him down to her level. Time seemed to slow. She saw his eyes widen in surprise, felt his sharp intake of breath. Behind her, gasps echoed through the cathedral. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so softly only he could hear. Then she pressed her lips to his. The kiss was meant to be a distraction, a scandal, an escape plan. But the moment their lips met, electricity shot through her body. His lips were soft, surprised, but not unwilling. His hand instinctively went to her waist, steadying her. She caught the faint scent of his cologne, not the cheap fragrance a security guard would wear, but something expensive, subtle. For 3 heartbeats, the world disappeared. No wedding. No merger. No betrayals. Just the surprising softness of his lips, the strength of his arms, the racing of her heart. Then reality crashed back in. Shouts erupted behind them. She heard James's angry bellow, her mother's shocked cry, her father's thundering "Olivia." As the chaos erupted around them, Marcus made a split-second decision that shocked everyone, including Olivia. Instead of pushing her away, he pulled her closer, his free hand moving to shield her from the approaching crowd. The motion was smooth, practiced, protective, not the awkward reaction of a surprised security guard, but the calculated move of someone used to taking control. "This way," he murmured against her ear, guiding her swiftly toward the service entrance. His keycard, which should have only accessed basic security areas, somehow opened the restricted door behind them. His movements were precise, confident, as if he'd mapped this escape route long ago. "Stop them!" James's voice thundered through the cathedral. But Marcus was already leading her down a narrow corridor, his hand warm and steady against her back. They rounded one corner, then another, moving through the cathedral's ancient maze with surprising certainty. "You're not really a security guard, are you?" Olivia managed between breaths, her heart pounding as they moved quickly through the shadows. Marcus's lips curved into a slight smile, even as his eyes remained alert, scanning their path. "No more than you're willing to be Mrs. James Maxwell." He pressed his earpiece, speaking quietly, "Package secure. Initiate Protocol Alpha." Suddenly, the service exit door ahead of them burst open, revealing a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. A driver in a suit held the door open, his stance military precise. "Ms. Bennett," Marcus said, his voice shifting from the humble security guard to something entirely different, authoritative, refined, powerful. "I believe we need to talk about Maxwell Corp's tech platform, and why I've spent the last week undercover in your building. But first, may I suggest we find somewhere less combustible? My beautiful family, let's pause here for a moment." That connection between Olivia and Marcus, that spark, that instant pull of 2 souls finding each other, it's magical, isn't it? Have you ever experienced that heart-stopping moment when you looked into someone's eyes and just knew? Someone completely unexpected who changed everything? Share your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you're crossing your fingers for Olivia's happiness, for her chance at true love, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's see how many of us are cheering for her brave decision. The SUV glided through Manhattan streets, its tinted windows shielding them from the chaos they'd left behind. Olivia sat perfectly still, her fingers tracing her lips where Marcus's kiss still burned. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, missed calls from her father, her mother, James, the wedding planner. She switched it off. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, studying Marcus's reflection in the privacy glass. He'd removed his security uniform jacket, revealing a perfectly tailored white shirt. Even that small change transformed him from ordinary guard to something else entirely. "Somewhere safe," he replied, his voice carrying that new authority that made her pulse quicken. "My private office. We need to talk about Maxwell Corp and why their tech platform could destroy both our companies." "Our companies?" The pieces started falling into place in her mind. His expensive watch. His confident commands. The way he carried himself, even in a guard's uniform. "Who are you really?" Before he could answer, her backup phone, the one only her assistant knew about, chimed with breaking news alerts. Her escape had already hit the financial feeds. Bennett Industries stock was fluctuating wildly. The Maxwell merger was in chaos. "They're saying I've had a mental breakdown," she read, her voice tight. "That I assaulted a security guard and fled the scene. James is already spinning this against me." Marcus watched Olivia reading the news alerts, his carefully laid plans colliding with unexpected emotions. He'd come to Bennett Industries for one purpose: to expose Maxwell Corp's fraudulent tech platform before the merger destroyed both companies. A week of undercover work, gathering evidence, watching their operations from the inside. He hadn't planned on her. Hadn't planned on the way his chest tightened when she walked through the lobby each morning, head high despite the weight on her shoulders. Hadn't planned on their conversations in the rain, or how her genuine smile made him want to tear down his walls. "Take the next right," he instructed his driver, buying time to think. His penthouse office would be safe, but taking her there meant no going back. No more pretense. The truth would change everything, not just about who he was, but about what he knew. About her family's company, about Maxwell's schemes, about the web of lies surrounding this merger. Every instinct he'd honed building Stone Enterprises told him to focus on business. The fraud evidence in his office would sink Maxwell Corp. Combined with Olivia's insider knowledge, they could prevent the merger, save thousands of jobs, protect both their companies. But his hand still tingled where it had touched her waist. His lips still held the memory of that desperate kiss. For the first time in his career, Marcus Stone found himself caught between duty and desire, between exposing the truth and protecting someone who'd suddenly become far more than just a part of his investigation. The SUV pulled into a private underground garage beneath a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. Not the modest security guard's apartment Olivia might have expected, but a fortress of steel and glass that housed some of the city's most powerful companies. The driver pressed his palm to a biometric scanner, and the elevator doors opened silently. This was Marcus Stone's real world. CEO of Stone Enterprises, the $30 billion tech company that had revolutionized cybersecurity. His name rarely appeared in the press, a deliberate choice. His power came from staying in the shadows, from knowing more than others thought he knew. "Welcome to Stone Enterprises, Ms. Bennett," he said softly as the elevator climbed to the top floor. The doors opened directly into his penthouse office, a space that screamed power and wealth, yet maintained an understated elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, while screens displayed real-time market data along one wall. "You're Marcus Stone," Olivia breathed, recognition dawning in her eyes. "The ghost CEO. The one who—" She paused, pieces clicking into place. "The one who's been buying up tech companies that compete with Maxwell Corporation." He moved to his desk, pressing a button that turned the windows opaque. On the screens, data about Maxwell Corp's tech platform scrolled past, lines of code, test results, security breaches. Everything he discovered during his week undercover. "I had to know the truth," he said. "And I had to know if you were part of their scheme." Part of their scheme? Olivia stepped closer to the screens, her shoulder brushing against his. Neither moved away. "You think I knew about this?" "I needed to be sure," Marcus said softly. "But after day one, I knew you were different. I watched you challenge James in that merger meeting, saw how you protected your employees' interests. You were the only one asking the right questions about Maxwell's technology." Their eyes met in the reflection of the darkened windows. The pretenses were gone, no more security guard, no more dutiful daughter. Just two people standing in the fading afternoon light, drawn together by something deeper than business. "Those conversations we had," Olivia turned to face him, close enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne. "In the lobby, in the rain, was any of it real?" Marcus reached up, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch sent electricity through her skin. "All of it. That's what complicated everything. I came to expose Maxwell Corp, but I stayed because... Because? Because I couldn't bear to watch you marry him. Not just for business reasons." His hand lingered near her cheek. "Those moments in the lobby? They were the most honest part of my day." Olivia's breath caught. The attraction that had simmered between them as guard and heiress now blazed between them as equals. No more stolen glances across the lobby. No more pretending the spark wasn't real. A harsh ring cut through the moment. Olivia's backup phone lit up with her father's number. Before she could decline it, another call came through on Marcus's private line, Robert Maxwell himself. "They're realizing where you are," Marcus said, his protective instinct kicking in. The security footage from the cathedral must have been clear enough for facial recognition. "My father will be furious," Olivia's voice was steady despite her trembling hands. "Not just about the kiss or the escape, but about me being here. Stone Enterprises is his biggest potential rival in the tech sector." As if confirming her words, both their phones chimed with news alerts. The Bennett-Maxwell merger was officially on hold. Bennett Industries stock was plummeting. Maxwell Corp was calling for an emergency board meeting. "James will never let this go," she continued, moving to the window. "His pride alone, and now, being connected to you. He'll see it as a corporate takeover attempt." Marcus joined her at the window, their reflections overlapping in the glass. "Your father's already released a statement. He's claiming you're being manipulated, that I orchestrated this to destroy the merger." "And Maxwell Corp?" "Their PR team is painting you as unstable, suggesting the pressure of the wedding was too much." His jaw tightened. "They're trying to discredit you before you can expose what we've found about their tech platform." Their phones buzzed again, messages from lawyers, board members, reporters. Two of New York's most powerful families were about to go to war, with them caught in the crossfire. The next morning's Wall Street Journal headline screamed across every trader's screen, "Bennett-Maxwell merger collapses, Stone Enterprises CEO in shocking twist." The financial world was in chaos. Three of New York's most powerful families were now locked in a corporate battle that threatened to reshape the entire tech sector. Maxwell Corp just announced they're suing Bennett Industries for breach of contract, Olivia's assistant reported through their secure line. They're also filing a separate suit against Stone Enterprises for interference. From his private war room on the top floor of Stone Enterprises, Marcus watched the market numbers scroll past. Maxwell Corp stock had dropped 12% in the first hour of trading. Bennett Industries wasn't faring much better. Only Stone Enterprises held steady. The market couldn't decide if Marcus was a villain or a hero in this corporate drama. "Your father's giving a press conference," Marcus called to Olivia, who sat at his conference table surrounded by documents. They'd been working through the night, preparing their defense. Richard Bennett appeared on the screen, his silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. "This merger represented the future of both our companies," he declared. "Stone Enterprises' underhanded tactics and manipulation of my daughter will not go unchallenged." The threats came fast and fierce. Maxwell Corp began pulling their contracts with Bennett Industries suppliers. Richard Bennett's oldest business partners suddenly found reasons to distance themselves. The corporate world was taking sides, and the battlefield grew bloodier by the hour. "They're targeting our Asian division," Olivia said, scanning through urgent emails. "3 major clients have already withdrawn. Dad's life's work is falling apart, and it's my fault." "It's not your fault," Marcus replied, handing her a fresh coffee. "Look at this." He pulled up internal Maxwell Corp documents on his screen. They were planning to strip Bennett Industries bare after the merger. "Your father's voting shares, your position, the entire Asian division, it would all have been gone within 6 months." A notification flashed across both their phones. Maxwell Corp had just announced a partnership with Bennett Industries' biggest competitor. The message was clear: they aimed to crush the company that had spurned them. "Your company's under attack too," Olivia pointed out, showing Marcus another alert. Maxwell Corp's tech division had just undercut Stone Enterprises' prices by 40%. "They're trying to steal your government contracts." "Let them try," Marcus said grimly. "But we have bigger problems. 3 members of your father's board just called an emergency meeting. They're talking about forcing him out." While the corporate war raged in public, Marcus orchestrated a silent counterattack. In his private office, surrounded by screens showing market data, he worked his network of connections built over years of quiet power plays. "Get me the SEC filing from last quarter," he instructed his team via secure video link. "And those test results from Maxwell's beta platform." His fingers flew across the keyboard, connecting dots that others had missed. Late into the night, he made calls to tech journalists he trusted, sharing carefully selected pieces of evidence about Maxwell Corp's platform flaws. By morning, questions about Maxwell's technology would begin appearing in respected tech blogs. Small doubts, planted precisely. "The Asian investors are willing to meet," his head of international operations reported. "They want to hear our side of the story." A small victory, keeping Olivia's division's partners from jumping ship completely. He hadn't told her about these midnight maneuvers. She was fighting her own battles, and he needed to give her space to prove herself. But he could shield her, create openings for her to exploit, lay the groundwork for her counterattack. "Sir," his security chief appeared at the door. "There's a situation at Bennett Industries. Their servers just went dark. I think Maxwell Corp launched a cyber attack. They're trying to wipe the evidence Olivia gathered about their tech platform's flaws." Not knowing Olivia was already on it, Marcus sprang into action, thinking of who to call, but before he could reach his phone, another alert flashed across his screen. Someone was already countering the attack, protecting Bennett Industries servers with sophisticated defense protocols that matched Stone Enterprises' best work. "It's Ms. Bennett, sir," his tech team reported, a note of admiration in their voices. She's redirecting the attack back to Maxwell's own systems. She's brilliant. Marcus watched the code flowing across his screens, a small smile playing on his lips. While he'd been working his corporate connections, Olivia had been 10 steps ahead. She hadn't just anticipated Maxwell's attack, she'd prepared for it. Minutes later, his phone buzzed with a message from her: emergency board meeting at Bennett Industries. Don't wait up. While Marcus fought from the shadows, Olivia had been long disturbed by the thought of her father being voted out, while she was busy hiding. So, she decided it was time to step into the light. She walked into Bennett Industries' emergency board meeting, uninvited but unafraid. 8 board members sat around the table, all men who'd watched her grow up, now ready to vote her father out. "Gentlemen," she said, placing a flash drive on the table. "Before you make any decisions, I suggest you look at this." She pulled up her analysis of Maxwell's tech platform, the same flaws she'd spotted months ago but no one had heeded. "The merger would have destroyed us," she continued, her voice firm. "Their technology is fundamentally flawed. The security breaches alone would have cost us billions within the first year." The board members leaned forward, examining her data. She walked them through the numbers, the testing failures, the hidden problems she'd documented. Years of financial training crystallized in this moment. And here, she highlighted a series of transactions, proof that Maxwell Corp planned to strip our assets post-merger. They never wanted a partnership. They wanted to dismantle us. One by one, she watched understanding dawn in their eyes. These men had built their careers on recognizing solid analysis. After the board meeting triumph, Olivia and Marcus developed a careful routine. Every evening, as the city lights began to sparkle, they'd meet in different locations: quiet cafes, hidden corners of Central Park, rooftop gardens of buildings Marcus owned. Places where they could be themselves, away from corporate wars and family pressures. "The board's fully behind us now," Olivia said one evening as they shared coffee on a secluded balcony overlooking Manhattan. "But James is still a problem. He's been meeting with our investors, trying to turn them against Dad." Marcus reached across the table, his fingers intertwining with hers. These moments had become precious, when they could drop their corporate armor and just be two people falling in love amid chaos. "Maxwell Corp's stock dropped another 8% today," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Your analysis of their tech flaws is spreading through the industry. Nobody wants to partner with them now." But business talk always faded as the nights grew deeper. They found themselves sharing more: childhood dreams, secret fears, hopes for the future. The kiss that had started as an escape plan had bloomed into something real, something neither of them had expected to find. "I never wanted to run away," Olivia confessed one night, standing close to him as rain fell around their sheltered corner. "I wanted to stand and fight. I just needed someone who believed I could." Marcus pulled her closer, his arms strong and secure around her. "I came looking for corporate fraud," he murmured into her hair. "I didn't expect to find you. My beautiful family, hold on to your hearts because the ending of Olivia and Marcus's story is about to take your breath away. If you're invested in their journey, if you're rooting for true love to win against all odds, don't risk missing what happens next. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss any of our upcoming stories. These tales of unexpected love, of destiny stepping in just when you need it most, are what make our family special. Let's see how many of us believe in the power of following your heart. The annual Bennett Industries charity gala transformed the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall into a battlefield disguised as a ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over New York's elite as they whispered behind champagne flutes, watching the drama unfold. James Maxwell stood at the base of the grand staircase, his tuxedo immaculate, his smile sharp as a blade. He'd come uninvited, flanked by his father and their lawyers. The crowd parted around them like water around rocks. Olivia, in a deep blue gown that made her look every inch the corporate princess, stood her ground at the top of the stairs. The evidence against Maxwell Corp burned on the flash drive hidden in her clutch. The board members who'd backed her stood strategically placed throughout the room. "Bold of you to show up here," James called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent hall. "Especially after your little performance at the cathedral. Tell me, is your security guard boyfriend here tonight?" The crowd tittered, but Olivia didn't flinch. Her fingers tightened around her champagne glass as she saw her father approaching from one side, Maxwell's lawyers from the other. The trap was closing in, exactly as she and Marcus had planned. "Actually," she replied, her voice clear and steady, "he is." The crowd turned as footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Marcus Stone strode through the main entrance, no longer in a security guard's uniform but wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. The whispers rose to a crescendo as recognition swept through the room. "Marcus Stone," Robert Maxwell breathed, his face paling. "The CEO of Stone Enterprises." "The same," Marcus said, climbing the stairs to stand beside Olivia. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Though you might remember me better as the security guard your son dismissed every day for a week without a second glance." James's confidence cracked. You were undercover in our building?" "I needed to protect my investments," Marcus's voice carried effortlessly across the silent room. "When I discovered flaws in Maxwell Corp's tech platform, I had to know if Bennett Industries was aware of the risks. What I found instead," he looked at Olivia, his eyes softening, "was someone else fighting to expose the truth." The crowd buzzed with excitement. Photos were already hitting social media, the mysterious CEO Marcus Stone standing hand in hand with Olivia Bennett, while James Maxwell stared up at them in shock. Richard Bennett pushed through the crowd, his face thunderous. "You!" He pointed at Marcus. "You infiltrated my company, manipulated my daughter." "Dad, stop!" Olivia's voice cut through the tension. But James seized the moment of family discord. "See?" James sneered. This was his plan all along. The great Marcus Stone, using the naive Bennett heiress to destroy our merger. "Tell me, Stone, did you seduce her before or after you decided to ruin our companies?" Marcus moved to step forward, but Olivia's hand on his arm stopped him. Robert Maxwell joined the fray, his voice booming across the hall. "The Bennett-Maxwell merger would have revolutionized the tech industry," Robert declared. "Instead, you've chosen to side with this corporate spy. Richard, control your daughter before she destroys everything we've built." The crowd pressed closer, phones recording every moment. Security teams from all three companies tensed, watching their respective CEOs face off on the stairs. "My daughter?" Richard's voice shook with rage. "I taught her everything she knows about business. And now you dare to suggest you taught her?" Robert scoffed. "Look at her. Ready to throw away $1 billion merger for what? Some kiss with a man who lied about his identity?" The accusations flew back and forth, three of New York's most powerful men unleashing weeks of fury. James's mask of sophistication cracked completely as he shouted about betrayal. Robert Maxwell's face grew redder with each passing second. Richard Bennett looked torn between defending his company and disowning his daughter. Enough! Olivia's voice rang through the hall, silencing everyone. She descended 3 steps, positioning herself between the warring parties. "Dad," she said, her voice quieter but no less powerful. "You taught me to always protect Bennett Industries. To put our company first. To recognize threats and eliminate them." She pulled the flash drive from her clutch. "That's exactly what I've done." "By humiliating us?" Richard's voice cracked. "By running away from your responsibilities?" "My responsibilities?" Olivia's laugh was sharp. "My responsibility is to our company, our employees, our legacy. Not to a merger that would destroy everything you built." She turned to face the crowd. "Marcus didn't manipulate me. He proved what I already knew: Maxwell Corp's technology is fatally flawed." "How dare you?" James started, but Olivia cut him off. "I have proof. Not just of the tech failures, but of your plans to strip our company bare after the merger. To fire our employees, sell our assets, destroy Dad's life's work." Her eyes locked with her father's. "You raised me to be strong, to fight for what's right. That's not manipulation, Dad. That's your daughter becoming everything you taught her to be." Richard Bennett stood frozen, looking at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. The fierce determination in her eyes, the straight set of her shoulders, a mirror of his own stance in countless boardroom battles. "Everything I did," she continued, her voice softening, "I did to protect our company. Our family. Our people. The proof," Olivia held up the flash drive, "is all here. Maxwell Corp's tech platform fails basic security protocols. Their promises of revolutionary AI? Smoke and mirrors." She nodded to one of the board members, who stepped forward with a laptop. The grand hall's lights dimmed as projectors illuminated the walls. Lines of code, test results, and financial projections filled the space. The crowd of New York's financial elite leaned forward, recognizing the magnitude of what they were seeing. Additionally, Marcus stepped forward. "Stone Enterprises' investigation reveals Maxwell Corp has hidden these flaws from their shareholders. The SEC will be very interested in our findings." Robert Maxwell's face turned ashen. James tugged at his collar, eyes darting toward the exits. The whispers among the crowd grew louder as financial analysts in attendance began texting furiously. A merger with Maxwell Corp wouldn't strengthen Bennett Industries, Olivia continued. "It would destroy us." "But," she turned to her father, "I have a different proposal." She gestured to Marcus, who produced a folder embossed with the Stone Enterprises logo. "A true partnership. Stone Enterprises security software combined with Bennett Industries distribution network. Real innovation, not empty promises." Richard Bennett took the folder with trembling hands. The Maxwell men watched in silent fury as he read through the proposal, his expression shifting from skepticism to interest to cautious hope. "The terms are fair," Marcus added. "Both companies remain independent, but we work together. No forced marriages required." The tension in the room shifted as Richard Bennett looked up from the proposal, his eyes moving between his daughter and Marcus. The business terms made sense, brilliant even. But there was one more truth to face. "And what about you two?" he asked quietly. "Is this just business?" Marcus turned to Olivia, taking both her hands in his. The cameras flashed around them, but in that moment, they might as well have been alone. "I came to Bennett Industries looking for corporate fraud," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the now hushed room. "Instead, I found the most brilliant, brave, beautiful woman I've ever met. Someone who challenges me, who fights for what's right, who sees the real me behind the CEO title." Olivia's eyes glistened as she squeezed his hands. "I was supposed to marry for business," she replied. "Instead, I found love where I least expected it. With someone who believes in me, supports me, and makes me stronger." The crowd sighed collectively as Marcus pulled her close. Unlike their first desperate kiss at the cathedral, this one was slow, sweet, filled with promise. When they parted, the room erupted in applause. James and Robert Maxwell slipped away, their power play shattered. But Richard Bennett stepped forward, looking years older but somehow lighter. "Welcome to the family," he said gruffly, extending his hand to Marcus. "Both professionally and—" He glanced at his beaming daughter, personally. The photographers caught the moment the three of them embraced, marking the end of one era and the beginning of another. In the background, the projector still displayed the business proposal, but no one was looking at it anymore. They were too busy watching love triumph over power, truth overcome greed, and a security guard who turned out to be so much more sweep a corporate princess off her feet. Sometimes the path others choose for us feels safe, predictable, lined with golden promises and familiar expectations. But true happiness, real success, often lies in having the courage to step off that well-worn road and forge our own way. Olivia Bennett faced a choice that many of us understand all too well, the choice between pleasing others and being true to herself. She could have walked down that cathedral aisle, said the expected words, lived the expected life. She could have chosen security over passion, duty over love, others' dreams over her own. But in that heart-stopping moment, when her lips met Marcus's in that desperate kiss, she chose herself. She chose truth over pretense, courage over comfort, love over obligation. And in doing so, she didn't just save herself, she saved her father's company, protected countless jobs, and found a love story worthy of her brave heart. Life rarely gives us clear signs pointing to happiness. Sometimes we have to trust that flutter in our chest, that whisper in our soul that says, "This way. This path. This choice." Sometimes the biggest risk is the one that leads us home. 1 year has passed since that fateful gala night. The headlines about the failed Maxwell merger have faded, replaced by glowing reports of the Bennett-Stone partnership's success. Their joint venture revolutionized corporate cybersecurity, protecting companies worldwide while creating thousands of new jobs. At Bennett Industries headquarters, a fresh energy fills the halls. Olivia's office, now next to her father's, has become a hub of innovation. The Asian division she saved has doubled in size. Young executives seek her out for mentorship, drawn by the story of the heiress who chose her own path and transformed an industry. Marcus moved Stone Enterprises' main office to the same building, though he no longer needs to wear a security guard's uniform to visit. The sight of him and Olivia sharing coffee in the lobby has become a familiar one, their love story inspiring whispers of romance among the staff. Richard Bennett changed too. The man who once arranged a marriage to secure a merger now champions his daughter's vision for the company's future. He and Marcus have become unlikely allies, their shared respect for Olivia building bridges neither expected. As for James Maxwell, his father's company suffered after their tech flaws came to light. But the scandal led to needed reforms, proving that sometimes facing hard truths leads to better outcomes. The last anyone heard, he'd moved to Silicon Valley, humbled but perhaps wiser. The security guard station in the lobby remains, though its most famous occupant has moved up to the executive floor. But sometimes, on quiet evenings, Olivia and Marcus stop there, remembering where their story began, proof that love can find us anywhere, if we're brave enough to recognize it. You see, my beautiful family, true love isn't always about grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it's about having the courage to listen to your heart when everyone else is telling you to follow their plans. It's about recognizing that one genuine connection can be worth more than all the business deals in the world. Olivia and Marcus's story teaches us that the most precious moments in life often come disguised as challenges. That sometimes the person who seems the most unexpected, a security guard, an undercover CEO, might be the one who sees the real you, who helps you become the person you were always meant to be. But most importantly, their story reminds us that it's never too late to change your path. That standing up for yourself, for what you believe in, isn't just an act of rebellion, it's an act of love. Love for yourself, love for your dreams, and love for the truth in your heart. And now, my beautiful family, let me end with a prayer. May God bless your hearts with the courage to choose love, to stand up for your truth, and to believe in the magic of unexpected moments. May He guide your paths and protect your dreams. Until our next story, keep your hearts open and your spirits bright. Remember that you are loved, you are valued, and you are worthy of every happiness. Drop a heart in the comments if this story touched your soul, and I'll see you in our next amazing journey together. God bless you all.